Now, we all know teenagers take risks, but some of those risks can get out of control.
Well, from binge drinking to drug taking and wild stunts that can turn deadly in an instant. 17-year-old James Wilkinson from Melbourne was like many teenagers, impulsive, daring and hardwired for risky behaviour.
What started off as a bit of reckless fun will now be etched in the memories of the other kids for the rest of their lives.
James was killed train surfing. He was standing on top of a moving train when he hit live power lines. Other young lives are tragically cut short by an experiment with drugs.
It was just a night out, you know, and that just went wrong, you know what I'm saying?
In 1995, Sydney schoolgirl Anna Wood died from taking ecstasy. Her death created a national panic, and she became the public face of Australia's fight against drugs. On the road, young drivers are more at risk too. They lack experience, go too fast and don't wear seatbelts. Crashes are the biggest killer of teens 16 plus. But it doesn't have to be illegal to be dangerous. Thailand's full moon party is a teen's paradise. No parents, no rules, no police, no limits. Described as schoolies on steroids, more Australians die in Thailand than in any other country.
So how can parents reduce the risks that teens take and keep them under control? Sunrise parenting expert Dr. Michael Carr-Gregg has some advice. Michael, it is every parent's nightmare, isn't it? How do you do it? How do you set rules without wrapping them in cotton wool and them getting more rebellious?
Well, all adolescents take risk. I bet if you asked every single member of the Sunrise production crew, they'd all be able to tell you of at least one occasion when, as teenagers, they did something dumb. It's important for them in terms of forming an identity, separating from parents, and, of course, most importantly, bonding with their peers. But what we have to do is make a distinction between healthy risk-taking and unhealthy risk-taking.
And is that the key? Because at that age, do you not quite understand the consequences of what you're doing?
Well, you don't, because your brain is hardwired for action, and the brakes only develop in girls at about 23 and boys at about 27. So part of the problem is you add to that brain development, that immature brain, alcohol, drugs and peer pressure, and you've got a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, Michael, I found, particularly with my son, that very sensible, and if he had time to think about a decision, he'd probably make the right one. But instant decisions, he was hopeless at. How do you... And that's what... No, that's what you're afraid of, an instant decision that is a mistake that changes their life. How do you get that through to them?
Well, look, there are a couple of really important principles that I think this is probably one of the most important messages I've ever given on Sunrise to prevent this from happening. The first and most important thing is to know their personality and their temperament. Not all kids are the same. You need to be the world expert on your kids. Are they tending towards high risk or low risk risk-taking behaviour? You need to monitor where they are, what they're doing and who they're with. You need to know their peers, because peers can influence them in a very, very negative way. You need to keep the lines of communication open, because those parents who actually are connected with their kids, they find that the kids engage in less of this life-threatening risk-taking behaviour. You need to have ground rules. You need to be really clear and consistent about what you think, what your attitudes, your values are, and use teachable moments like this tragic train surfing death to initiate a conversation. You need to make sure that all kids have a bailout system, so that you say to all kids, look, if you're in a situation where you can't cope, please, for goodness sake, send us a text message. It can be a little code word and we'll know to come and rescue you. Yep. And the last and most important one, I think, is probably to encourage those kids who do have an inclination towards risk-taking into highly charged adrenaline pushing situations which are safe. Things like rock climbing, things that are reasonably controlled.
That's a really good idea. Sort of try to get them to get their thrills in a, controlled environment. Yep. You're wonderful. So good to talk to you. Thanks, Michael.